I'm Chris Ralph, the professional prospector. Today we're going to talk about something interesting. How deep will your detector go? You know, the other day I brought my trailer home. I keep a trailer up in the Sierra Nevada gold country during the summertime. And, you know, this is kind of the end of the year for nice summery weather or even nice fall weather. It's getting cold and we're reaching the end of the season, so I decided to bring my trailer home. You know, it's been a messed up year, 2020. It has really been messed up between the COVID thing and all the fires. Man, California is just burning to the ground. Literally, you know, the 20 largest fires that have been recorded in California history, and they've only really been keeping records since about 1930. But of the 20 largest fires, one of them occurred in the 70 years between 1930 and 2000. The other 19 have occurred since 2000, and six of the 20 largest fires occurred in 2020. So it's getting bad, and California is, well, it's a whole other story. Anyway, I had one last day to get out with my metal detector and really do a great day of finding some gold. And I thought pretty hard about bringing my camera and filming and bringing you guys along. And I just thought, 2020 has been such a messed up year. I'm just gonna go out and have a nice day. Well, I wished I'd have brought you along because I had a great day. I got a nice nugget here. It's about 1/5 of an ounce in size. And I got a couple other nuggets that added up so that the total is around 1/4 of an ounce. Pretty good for a day's work, you know. I've done better than that, but still, if I get 1/4 ounce a day every day, that'd be awesome. I don't average that high. So I was real pleased. I was out there with my GPZ 7000, which I did a review on, and I called it the most powerful detector on the market. And actually recently had a guy who commented on my review of the GPZ 7000, and he said I was a complete idiot because I didn't say how deep that detector would go. I gotta tell you that most of the people who tell me I'm an idiot in my comments are people who have no idea what they're talking about. They're people who've never done whatever it is that they're commenting on, and so they tell me I don't know what I'm doing because I don't know what they know and they've never done it before. I'll bet this guy has never swung a metal detector, because the very question, what is the depth that the detector will go, is a question that's almost impossible to answer. And we're going to go over why it's such a difficult and complex question today's video. So come along with me and we will look at all the factors that determine how deep your detector will go, so you can know. You can understand what you can do and what you can't. And it makes a difference. And knowing how deep your detector will go or could go will make a difference in your skill of being a detectorist and finding gold. So come along, we're going to take a look at all the different factors. Now, I do a number of metal detector reviews with an eye toward gold prospecting, not just metal detector reviews for hunting coins or caches or, you know, relics at an old Civil War site or something like that. I'm focused on gold because that's what my channel's about. And in my reviews, and I'll probably do more of them in the future, but in my reviews, I get a lot of people ask me, hey, how deep will this detector go? Well, it's not a simple question. And we're going to look today at the 4 main factors, that determine how deep your detector will see. And you'll see by the time we get to the end of this that it's not a simple question. The first and most obvious thing is, what's your target? Is your target a tiny little nugget that's just barely a picker and maybe weighs, you know, 1/10 of a gram? Or is it a nugget that weighs 200 pounds? Because I can tell you that any metal detector, all metal detectors, will see a 200-pound nugget a lot deeper than they'll see a little 1/10 of a gram picker. So, when people ask, well, how deep will it go? Well, it might go half an inch on a 1/10 of a gram picker. It might go 2 or 3 feet on a 200-pound nugget. There aren't very many 200-pound nuggets out there. I've never found one, and I don't think there's been any found since before 1900. Well, maybe after 1900, but still, it's been a long time since people found nuggets like that. They're just not very common. And even in the old days of the 1800s gold rushes, not very many people found nuggets that big. So, what's the size of your target? Well, if you can't tell me what the size of the target is, I can't tell you how deep your detector will go, because it'll go somewhere between this and, this. And so how deep will it go? Depending on the size of the target, it might be anything from this to, that kind of depth. And honestly, even deeper. I used to tell people that had asked me this question, hey, I can see the engine block on my truck at 15 feet. Is that deep enough? Well, nuggets that are the size of an engine block and respond like an engine block basically don't exist. So how big is your target? That's the first and biggest question. Another factor that controls how your nugget responds, more than just the size, is the nature of it. Metal detectors will see solid nuggets a lot more than they'll see little wiry nuggets. And some nuggets, here I'll show you one, can be pretty wiry. I mean, basically it's just a mesh of wires. So is your nugget solid, or is it wiry, or is it in between? What is it? So the nature of a piece, and it makes a big difference. I mean, literally, I've seen powerful detectors that a nugget that weighs 1/4 of an ounce, it'll hardly see it because it's all wiry. And yet a nugget that weighs 1/10 that size, it'll see no problem because it's nice and solid. So the nature of the nugget, somewhere between really wiry and solid, makes a huge difference too. Another factor is the shape of the nugget. Whether it's a solid ball, 3-dimensional type thing, or is it, like a coin that's flat and big on 2 sides. I have nuggets like that. I've found nuggets that are pretty good size, that are big in 2 dimensions and thin in the other. So if you find a cornflake, the amount of success you're going to have is, you're not going to see it as well as you'd see something solid. So size, nature, wiry or porous or solid, or whether it's what the shape is. Another factor is the alloy. Different nuggets have different alloys, how much silver, how much copper. Sometimes nuggets have iron in them. The palladium is another thing that nuggets have traces amounts of palladium. So, what's the alloy that your nugget is made of? So, when you ask someone how deep, the response will be, well, what size, what nature, what shape, and what alloy. Now you're starting to see, and that's just the first of the things that we're going to look at. The next important factor is the mineralization in the soil. Basically, how much iron and what form the iron is in the soil. Now, iron happens to be the 3rd most abundant mineral in the crust of the earth. And I think I read someplace the Earth's crust is an average of I think it's somewhere around 8 or 9%. I could look that up, but that's close enough. It tells you that there's a significant percentage of iron in the soil of the ground. Rocks, and some rocks have lots of iron in them. Some rocks have virtually no iron in them. It varies a lot. It's not like, it's always 8%. No, it varies between, 80 or 90% and 0%. So one of the things that you need to know about metal detectors is almost always the iron response is the metal detector generates an electric field into the ground. The iron response in the soil is usually larger than the response of your actual target. And so the metal detector has to be able to fish out, and it's what they call ground balancing. It has to balance out that iron in the soil and see the smaller response that comes from a gold nugget or a coin or something like that, or a nail. So when your metal detector is seeing something in the ground, the amount of iron mineralization makes a huge difference. And it actually makes a huge difference more toward VLF type detectors than for pulse induction. Now, I won't say that it has no effect on the pulse induction, but it has a lot more effect on a VLF. And you got to think of this, when the metal detector is sending its, waves into the ground looking for a target, the ground responds too. And the more iron that's in the ground, the more the iron kind of weakens or attenuates the magnetic field that's going into the ground. Think of it like this. Let's say you have a big jar, glass jar, full of nice, clean, clear water. You can see right through it. Just came out of your tap, perfectly clear. But you take a half a teaspoonful of mud and stir it around in there. Now you can, it's kind of milky. Maybe you can still see to the other side of the jar, but just barely. Now you put in a half a cup of mud and then you stir it in, you can't see it at all. You can't see through the jar, just all you see is the mud. And that's kind of like the iron in the soil. The soil, what it sees through to see the target, the detector has to be able to balance that out and be able to see through the iron response that's coming back from the ground to the metal detector. So it makes a huge factor in how deep your detector will penetrate. So in addition to asking questions about the nugget, if you really want to know how deep your detector go, you have to know how much mineralization is in the soil at the place where your metal detector is working. And it varies even in a place. So you may be working here and have a certain level of iron in the soil, but you may go over there 10 yards, some other place, like I say, 10 yards or some other short distance, and it may be a lot different over there than it is over here. So the iron mineralization is only good for that spot. It's not necessarily the same over here. So there's another question. Well, what's the mineralization of the soil? Another important factor is the size of the coil you're using. Smaller coils see small targets a lot better, but they don't punch down as deep. Big coils, like this big coil I have for my GPZ 7000, and this is actually the standard coil for this detector. A big coil like this, on most metal detectors, this actually has a great capability of seeing smaller nuggets. But even so, the idea is that big coils generally will punch a lot deeper, but they won't see the smallest nuggets. So it's a trade-off. If you're looking for small nuggets, a little coil is better, but you won't go as deep. If you're looking for big nuggets down deep, a big coil is better, but it won't see those small nuggets. So another question is, what coil are you using? And you can kind of see by just looking at that, the idea that, if you find a spot where there's multiple nuggets in a comparatively small area, what prospectors call a patch, you might want to go over that patch with multiple coils, because you may get nuggets with a big coil down deep that you wouldn't see with a smaller coil. And if you go over it with a smaller coil, you may pick up smaller nuggets shallow that you won't see with the big coil. So you get an area that's intensely got a lot of nuggets in it. Yeah, you may want to go over it with several different coils, even several different detectors if you can get your hands on them, and try different things, because different types of detectors, different technologies, different ground balancing technologies, different coil sizes may see some things that another detector will miss. Another important factor is what detector are you using. Now, different technologies, this is actually a kind of a unique technology, the GPZ. It's called a zero voltage, ZVT or zero voltage technology. But there's a lot more VLFs and pulse induction detectors. This is kind of a hybrid of those two. And the technology makes a difference as to how deep you can punch. And so if you're, using a VLF, in general terms, is a general rule, VLFs are much more sensitive to smaller nuggets. I did a review of the most sensitive metal detectors, and they're all VLFs because VLFs tend to be more sensitive. On the other hand, is a general thing, pulse induction machines tend to be able to see a little deeper, especially in soils with mineralized ground. But the truth is that, in low mineral ground, in ground with very low or almost zero iron in the soil, low mineralization, a VLF with the same size coil and a pulse induction machine, same size coil, will actually see to about the same depth. And I've had dealers tell me this, oh, my VLF will see just as deep as your pulse induction machine if you have the same size coil. And maybe they'll say, or maybe they won't, in virtually unmineralized ground, well, that's true. And if you hear somebody say that and you don't believe it, no, it actually is true that in unmineralized or near zero mineral ground, it'll see deeper. But that's a trick statement, because most places where there's gold deposits, where you can find nuggets and that kind of stuff, it's not near zero mineralization. Iron tends to be associated with gold. A lot of times, iron pyrites are associated with gold in a lot of mineral deposits, gold deposits. So, it's kind of a trick question, because it's very rarely the situation where the soil is so iron free that the two detectors will see the same. And in fact, honestly, in a lot of higher iron situations, you really can't use a big coil on a BLF, because a really large coil, you'll just see so much iron with the coil, you'll have a hard time ground balancing. So, we come to the conclusion, how deep will your metal detector go? How deep can it penetrate? How deep can we see a nugget down there? Well, I hope that, having seen this video, you won't be one of those people that says, well, how come you can't tell me the number is 7 or 9 or 22 or some other number like that? Well, there is no number to tell, because it's a complex question. If you want to know how deep a detector will go, well, what kind of nuggets are we looking for? What's the size? What's the nature of it? Is it solid or wiry? What's the alloy of it? Has it got a lot of silver in it? Not a lot of silver in it? Have other metals in it? And what's the shape of it? Is it flat like a cornflake? Is it solid or round? There's all these different factors that go into, what the depth is going to be. What kind of coil are you using? Are you using a small coil? Are you using a big coil? What kind of technology are you using? What's the amount of iron in the ground at the spot that you're looking at? There's so many questions that you have to answer before you can give a number, that the number is really just specific to that spot. If people who do tests, and they say, well, I could see that nugget at 8 inches. Okay, and that spot that they were at, 8 inches. But in another spot where you're at, it might be 12 or it might be 4. So the 8 inches really doesn't tell you that much. And another thing that goes with that too, that I kind of forgot to mention with the mineralization in the soils, is how is your ground balance on your metal detector? I said that in order to see through the mineralized soil, the detector had to be ground balanced for that area. And if you're running along and you haven't ground balanced your detector in a while, and so your detector's maybe a little bit out of ground balance, yeah, you're not going to see as deep, because the detector isn't properly tuned to tune out the mineralization in the soil. So there's so many different things. I hope that you'll understand that it's a complex question, and the next time you look at a review video that I do, and I don't say, this detector goes 7 or this detector goes 9, because there is no such number. it's way too complex to give a number like that. And in fact, I had a friend of mine who he said, if you go to a dealer and you ask him how deep the detector will go and they give you a number, don't buy from that guy because he's being dishonest. And he's got a point to that you know, if somebody's going to give you a simple number without talking about the nuggets and the mineralization and the coils and everything else, you know, it's just not an honest thing. So I still stand by that the GPZ 7000 is the most powerful detector on the market, in the sense that when I say power, I mean that it'll punch deep on bigger nuggets, but it also has an amazing capacity for such a big coil to see small stuff. And I did get a couple of small nuggets with that nugget that I got, but I had a great day out in the field, and I'm sorry I didn't bring the camera to bring you guys along, but I hope you'll understand and take this little lesson on how deep your detector will go as a consolation prize for not being out in the field to see me get this nugget. It was down a little deep. It was actually in a road, and I had to, one thing about digging in roads, people ignore roads that go through old mining areas. Don't do that. Don't ignore the road through old mining. Now, roads tend to be really trashy, and so you may have to fight trash, but it tends to be a spot that people don't detect. They'll detect all around the road, but they won't detect in the road. So I got a nice nugget because I knew to detect in the road. Now, finding gold is all about really the skill and the knowledge that you have, and knowing little tips like don't overlook the roads. Knowing tips like that can make you a much better prospector. And I actually wrote a book about prospecting that tells all kinds of tips, all kinds of information, why you can't get a single number for the depth of your detector, but a lot of other stuff that goes with it. And if you read that book, you will increase your skill level as a prospector. And like a trade skill, like being an electrician or a plumber or something like that, it's all about what you know. And so when it comes to prospecting, it's about what you know. And I wrote a book, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my book right now. So let me tell you a little bit more about my book. It's called Fistful of Gold, and I wrote it because I want you to be able to go out and find for yourself Fistful of Gold. And you can see that it's an encyclopedia with all kinds of information, pictures, and that sort of thing. It's not in color, but color would have cost me a lot more to have printed, and so the book would have cost a lot more. It's for sale on Amazon, and you can pick it up. I'll put a link in the description below. I also serve as the editor for a prospecting magazine. It's ICMJ's Prospecting and Mining Journal. And honestly, you should check that out. We got stories and information, legal stuff, everything you know to increase your skills as a prospector. I write articles in this every month, and a lot of other very experienced prospectors contribute to the magazine as well. So check the magazine out. Also, I have a website, and the website is at NevadaOutbackGems.com. I'll put a link for it in the description below, but there's gobs of information there that you will find useful in your prospecting efforts. Finally, I want to say that I really appreciate your comments and thoughts, and even positive criticism. Don't come on there and just toss out insults, because I'll just delete your comments. But if you've got helpful things to say and questions to ask, do write and put those in the comments, because I answer my comments to people, and you'll hear from me in responding to you. So if you've enjoyed this video and you like what you see and you're interested in finding out more, well then sign up, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so they'll let you know when I post new videos. And like it and share it if again you see stuff that you really are excited about. And I'll be coming out with lots more new videos, and so we'll see you again real soon.